A 44-year-old man killed allegedly by his family in Changsha. Lawmakers passed a mandatory reporting of child abuse bill. And NATO allies call China a decisive enabler of Russia's war in Ukraine, and Beijing hits back. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. A 44-year-old man was killed allegedly by his family in Changsha. Police arrested the man's 22-year-old stepson on suspicion of manslaughter. The man's wife and stepdaughter were also arrested on suspicion of perverting the course of justice after they allegedly attempted to cover up the case. At the center of the case is a family of four residing in Folkming House at Fortune Estate. This resident who lives one floor below the family's unit said she often hears noise of brawls from upstairs and around her unit past midnight. On Monday afternoon, the police received a report from a 59-year-old woman saying that her husband had passed out at home. When officers arrived at the unit, they found a 44-year-old man lying in the living room. He was confirmed dead after being taken to Caritas Medical Center. At the time, the case was listed as death before reaching the hospital. It is understood the police found the man's head injury suspicious. During questioning, his wife, stepson, and stepdaughter all said the man stumbled and fell twice at home. Investigations later revealed that the man and his 22-year-old stepson had arguments on Sunday night, during which he was allegedly pushed and assaulted by his stepson, leading to the head injury. Police arrested the trio with the stepson charged with manslaughter and perverting the course of justice. The man's wife and 33-year-old stepdaughter were charged with perverting the course of justice. The trio appeared at the West Kowloon Magistrates Court for a mention hearing today. 22-year-old man Yuk Shing has been remanded in custody, while the victim's wife and stepdaughter have been granted $10,000 bail and have to report to the police station every night. The case has been adjourned until October 3rd. The mandatory reporting of child abuse bill passed a third reading at the Legislative Council. The bill mandates that 25 categories of specialized professionals must report serious cases of child abuse. Failure to comply will result in criminal charges. The legislation will come into effect 18 months upon the gazetting of the bill. Helen Chen reports.
With 79 votes in favor, the bill passed its third reading at the Legislative Council. The mandatory reporting of child abuse bill stipulates that teachers, social workers, medical staff, and other specified professionals are mandated to make reports of serious cases of child abuse. Non-compliance would incur criminal liability. Obstructing reporting is also illegal. The bill proposes a two-tier penalty system. The first tier incurs a fine of up to $50,000. The second tier incurs imprisonment of up to 3 months. Both leave a criminal record, which will lead to professional disqualification for those convicted. The bill allows for defenses for offense, including if the professional in question had already made reports on the same or substantially the same harm or risk. The only abstention vote was from lawmaker Michael Tien.
In courts, it is often the case that they would hand out very lenient punishment. Before, we have seen that with 3 months, they would only hand out 2 days of imprisonment. For 12 months maximum penalty, they would hand out 9 days of imprisonment.
Some in the education sector are worried about excessive reporting.
So, if we extend the imprisonment from 3 months to 1 year, it will cause panic in among the professionals. They will just report any case. Even if it's a mosquito bite, they will report the case first.
This from Secretary for Labor and Welfare, Chris Sun.
We're going to make use of the coming 18 months to make sure that everything is ready, so that by the time the legislation comes into effect, all the professions who are required under the law to make mandatory reporting, they will get the necessary training, and also they are well equipped to make the reporting as necessary.
Sun said there will be an app and guidelines about reporting mechanism jointly compiled by the social welfare, education, and medical sectors. The guidelines are expected to be issued in the second half of next year. Helen Chen, TVB News.
China's foreign ministry has hit back at NATO after being called a decisive enabler in Russia's war in Ukraine. Beijing called it hype and unreasonable. NATO made the statement at their 75th anniversary summit in Washington, D.C. The event is also being attended by leaders of Japan and South Korea. And China says the alliance must not bring chaos to Asia. It came as the military group underlined support for Ukraine. David Garrett has more.
The leaders of NATO members arrived for dinner at the White House. First, the Prime Minister of a founding member, Canada's Justin Trudeau. Emmanuel Macron from France followed, then Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukraine is not yet a member, but the NATO Secretary-General announced an agreement for more substantial aid.
As Ukraine continues its vital reforms, we will continue to support them on their irreversible path to NATO membership. The work we are doing together now will ensure that when the time is right, Ukraine can join without delay. It is not a question of if, but when.
It is what Russian President Vladimir Putin calls NATO's expansion into Ukraine that has, in part, triggered the war. Putin has repeatedly warned the West about this. And as Stoltenberg stood with all the NATO members, including US President Joe Biden, outside the White House before dinner, it was other comments that upset China. Stoltenberg accused Beijing of propping up Russia's economy.
China has become a decisive enabler of Russia's war against Ukraine. And China's support increases the threat Russia poses to Euro-Atlantic security. Allies have stated clearly that China cannot enable the largest conflict in Europe in recent history without this negatively impacting their interest and reputation.
Beijing called it belligerent rhetoric. Foreign Minister spokesperson Lin Jian said,
强烈不满，坚决反对。
NATO's agitating on the Ukraine issue is unreasonable and sinister. NATO's so-called security comes at the cost of other security. China backs Russia's contention that NATO expansion poses a threat to Russia. NATO should stop interfering and smearing China's image and not create chaos in the Asia-Pacific after creating turmoil in Europe. Back at dinner, Biden raised a glass to countries with common beliefs of equality, democracy and freedom.
To NATO and to our neighborhood of nations, may we continue to grow stronger and closer in all the years ahead.
A military alliance with close partners that we work together with every day. So therefore, a toast for the most successful, the strongest and the longest lasting alliance in history.
NATO foreign ministers also met for a meal and talks. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the 32-member organisation's door remains open to Ukraine, calling NATO a continuous creation. Indo-Pacific guests are also in attendance alongside Ukraine. As the sun sets on a busy second day, there follows one more day of the 75th anniversary summit. David Garrett, TVB News.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida are both at the summit, even though their countries are not part of NATO. They have used the meeting as a platform to voice concerns over Russia's relationship with North Korea. South Korea and Japan called the Moscow-Pyongyang alliance a serious threat. The statement was issued through Yoon's office after the South Korean leader arrived in the U.S. capital for a series of meetings, including one with Japan. South Korea and Japan have formed closer ties in recent times and confirmed they will strengthen cooperation with the U.S. Both Asian leaders will engage with NATO countries on the trip. Australia and New Zealand have also been invited to the summit as Indo-Pacific partners. In another development, the U.S. will begin deploying and stationing long-range missiles in Germany from 2026. The U.S. says the move demonstrates their commitment to NATO and European defense. Russia's deputy foreign minister says his country will come up with its own military response. U.S. episodic deployments in Germany are in preparation for stationing weapons including SM-6 Tomahawk cruise missiles and hypersonic weapons that have a longer range than current capabilities in Europe. NATO also says an air defense base in Poland designed to detect and intercept ballistic missiles is ready. Welcome back. In Britain, police have found the man suspected of killing the family of a BBC radio commentator. The wife and 2 daughters of horse racing commentator John Hunt were found at their home with serious injuries from a crossbow Tuesday night. They died at the scene a short time later. Tracy Furness has more.
Police said 3 women aged 25, 28 and 61 were found with serious injuries in a house in Bushey, northwest of London, on Tuesday evening. Police and ambulance crew tried to save them, but they were pronounced dead at the scene. The victims were Carol Hunt, wife of BBC horse racing commentator John Hunt, and their 2 daughters, Louise and Hannah Hunt.
There was police outside in black uniform with sort of semi-automatic guns walking around. So I initially thought it might be terrorists or something, but that's all I can say. And then they were here all last night. Obviously it's been blocked off and everything's been going on, but it's been a bit of a shock because it's a really residential area.
Police were called to a property in Ashland Close just before 7 p.m. last night. Officers attended alongside colleagues from the East of England Ambulance Service and, on arrival, found 3 women with serious injuries. Sadly, despite their best efforts, the women, who are believed to be related, died a short time later at the scene.
A massive manhunt was underway Wednesday. Armed police, forensic personnel and ambulance staff were scouring Hillyfields Park in Enfield, North London, a spot popular with joggers and dog walkers. Hertfordshire Police said 26-year-old Kyle Clifford was located in the North London park near his home. He's receiving medical treatment for his injuries. Police did not say how those injuries happened, but said they had not fired any shots. John Hunt is the main racing commentator for BBC 5 Live, the corporation's main news and sports radio channel. His voice is known to millions through his coverage of the Grand National and the Derby. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Public housing tenants will face a 10% rent increase in January next year. Speaking to TVB News, Secretary for Housing Winnie Ho said the government might consider raising the 10% cap on rental hikes if the need arises. The government reviews public housing rents every 2 years using a formula that takes into account the household income of tenants. The possible change in the rental hike cap has marked a change of tune from the housing chief, who said earlier the government has no intention of tweaking the rental adjustment mechanism. However, Ho said that's to make up for the housing authority's increasing financial needs. The deficit in rental public housing is set to balloon from $1.2 billion to more than $4 billion over the coming 3 years, starting from the 2024-25 period. Police today said the force will replace their Western-made revolvers with Chinese-manufactured pistols. The first group of officers will complete their training with the pistols by the end of July before the handguns are put into service. Wim Sang-ai reports.
These are the 2 handles of the Chinese-made pistols. The CF98A model, which is bigger in size, will be used by police constables. The smaller pistol is the CSLP5 and will be used by officers from the Criminal Investigation Department. The 2 models will soon replace the existing revolvers produced by the American firearm company Smith & Wesson. The revolvers have been used since the colonial period. Speaking to the press today, the police said the new pistols are more effective because they can be reloaded faster. The officers also said the design of the pistol handles are tailored to better fit the hand sizes of Asians. The force said the replacement of the handguns is a natural process without answering whether the decision is related to national security or sanctions from the West.
To review of the police uniform accoutrement as well as equipment is a regular basis that the police force has been doing. And this is just one of the items that fall into the category. To choose a good equipment, we rely on a couple of very important principles: the effectiveness and the long-term sustainability. Major principle, we need to make sure all this equipment could serve the purpose as well as to meet our weapon handling standard requirement.
When asked about the length of the replacement process, the office did not provide an exact timeline, but said it will be a long-term project.
The officer said the new firearms fulfill international safety standards, adding the force had kept an open mind during the selection process. Memos 9, TVB News.
Hong Kong Post has announced a special stamp issue to support the Hong Kong-China team at the Paris Olympics. A set of 4 stamps and associated philatelic products will feature sports in which the Hong Kong athletes had previously won Olympic medals, including fencing, swimming, table tennis, and cycling. The stamps will be released for sale on July 26th. Official first-day covers will be on sale at all post offices and on Hong Kong Post's online shopping platform from tomorrow. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.